On Thursday, members of both parties in the United States Senate voted to approve legislation proposed by Vice President Joe Biden that raises the limit on the amount of debt that the federal government may carry from $31.4 trillion to a higher amount. This prevents a default, which would have been the first in history. As a result of months of partisan bickering between Democrats and Republicans, the bill that had been passed by the House of Representatives on Wednesday was approved by the Senate by a vote of 63 to 36. Lawmakers were racing against the clock after months of arguing over partisan issues. If Congress did not take any action by the 5th of June, the Treasury Department has already warned that it would be unable to pay all of its bills. "We are avoiding default tonight," Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said on Thursday as he guided the proposal through his 100-member body as he worked to pass the legislation. Biden lauded the prompt action taken by Congress. "This bipartisan agreement is a big win for our economy and the American people," the Democratic president said in his statement, adding that he will sign it into law as soon as possible. The statement was released after the president announced his intention to sign the agreement into law. He indicated that he would issue a further remark on Friday. Biden participated actively in the bill's negotiations with Kevin McCarthy, who is the current Speaker of the House. Even though this acrimonious conflict has come to an end, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell has already identified the next budget issue. According to a statement he issued, in the coming months, Senate Republicans will continue working to provide for the common defense and control the reckless spending by Washington Democrats. McConnell was referring to the 12 pieces of legislation that will be worked on by Congress over the summer to finance government programs for the fiscal year that will begin on October 1. These laws will also carry out the wide directions that were included in the bill that raised the debt limit. In the meantime, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen provided some sharp counsel, saying, "I continue to strongly believe that the full faith and credit of the United States must never be used as a bargaining chip," which is something that Republicans have done over the previous several months. During a late-night session that took place the night before the final vote, senators went through over a dozen proposed modifications and voted against all of them. This was done in preparation for the Monday deadline. Because of this piece of legislation, the statutory restriction on the amount of money the federal government can borrow will be put on hold until January 1, 2025. In contrast to the majority of other industrialized nations, the United States places a cap on the total amount of debt that its federal government can incur through borrowing, and this rule applies regardless of how much money the legislature decides to spend. During his speech before the Senate, Schumer remarked, "America can breathe a sigh of relief right now. Time is a luxury." Republicans have delayed the ratification of any raise in the debt limit until they had secured some major expenditure cutbacks, which they said would be a measure that would begin addressing a rapidly increasing national debt. Instead, Biden advocated for higher taxes to be levied against the wealthy and companies to help deal with the ever-increasing debt. Tax increases of any kind were not even on the table for Republican consideration. McCarthy would not even contemplate the possibility of cutting expenditures on the military or veterans' benefits, and both major parties worked to protect the vast Social Security and Medicare retirement and healthcare systems from budget cuts. This resulted in a relatively narrow range of domestic discretionary programs being forced to absorb the majority of budget reductions. In the end, Republicans were successful in gaining reductions amounting to around $1.5 trillion over 10 years. These reductions may or may not be fully realized. Their original offer was for a savings total of $4.8 trillion over 10 years. In a purely technical sense, the Treasury Department reached its borrowing limit in January. Since that time, it has been necessary to resort to extraordinary measures to cobble together the funds required to pay the government's bills. Biden, Yellen, and the leaders of legislative leaders all admitted that causing a default due to a lack of finances would have major repercussions for the country. These included sending shockwaves across global financial markets, possibly causing job losses and recession in the United States, and rising interest rates for households on a variety of financial matters, including home mortgages, credit card debt, and other debts. On Wednesday evening, a vote of 314 to 117 was cast to approve the legislation in the House, which is controlled by Republicans. The majority of individuals who opposed the bill were members of the Republican Party. On Thursday, Schumer stated, "Time is a luxury the Senate does not have," and he meant it. Any unnecessary delay or any last-minute holdups would be an unnecessary and even dangerous risk, the quote from the article says. One of the amendments that were up for debate would prevent a West Virginia energy pipeline from receiving a rapid final approval and would compel budget cuts that are harsher than those contained in the plan that was passed by the House. At a time when a large number of immigrants are arriving at the border between the United States and Mexico, Republican Senator Roger Marshall proposed an amendment to establish new border controls. According to what he claimed, his proposal will put an end to the culture of lawlessness at our southern border. Despite this, the amendment was not approved by the Senate. Democrats said that it would take away protections for migrant children and deprive farmers in the United States of the employees they needed. Some Republicans wanted to expand spending on defense even further than the already elevated levels that were included in the bill that was passed by the House. In response, Schumer stated that the spending restrictions included in this measure would not prevent Congress from approving additional funds for emergencies such as assisting Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. According to Schumer, this debt ceiling deal does nothing to limit the Senate's ability to appropriate emergency supplemental funds to ensure that our military capabilities are sufficient to deter China, Russia, and our other adversaries and respond to ongoing and growing national security threats, including Russia's evil ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine. This debt ceiling deal does nothing to limit the Senate's ability to appropriate emergency supplemental funds, Schumer said. During several weeks of intense discussions, senior staffers for both Biden and McCarthy were responsible for piecing together the law. The primary point of contention was the amount of money that would be spent over the next couple of years on discretionary programs, including housing, environmental regulations, education, and medical research. Republicans desired significant expenditure reductions in these areas. According to estimates provided by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the bill would reduce spending by $1.5 trillion over the next decade. This is less than the $3 trillion in debt reduction that Biden advocated, which would primarily be accomplished through additional taxes. The United States came this close to defaulting on its obligations for the last time in 2011. This impasse caused severe damage to the financial markets, resulted in the very first reduction of the government's credit rating, and drove up the cost of borrowing money for the country. This time around, there was less drama than usual since it became apparent the week before that Biden and McCarthy would reach an agreement that would have enough support from both sides of the aisle to pass through Congress. Do you like it? Kindly give your valuable response in our comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting and informative videos.